It was a cold morning high up in the Wyoming mountains when the world of a broken man collided with a mystery that would change everything he thought he knew about pain, redemption, and love. The first snow of the season had just fallen, coating the tall pines in a quiet stillness that only mountain folk understood. For Caleb Rourke, a man who had lived alone for 7 years, silence had become both his comfort and his punishment. But that morning, silence was replaced by a sound he couldn't explain, a faint, irregular creak from the roof above his cabin. When he stepped outside, what he saw froze the breath in his chest. A woman, young, blonde, her hair tangled and face ghost pale, hung unconscious from the edge of his roof, her body swaying slightly in the wind. And across the pale skin of her back, dark, angry letters were burned into the flesh, Apache Lover. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and that no soul is too far gone to be saved, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. It helps us share more stories that touch the heart. For a long moment, Caleb couldn't move. The old trauma that had driven him into the mountains came rushing back, the screams, the fire, the faces he couldn't save. But instinct took over. He climbed up, cut her down, and carried her inside, wrapping her in one of his thick wool blankets. The woman's body was cold, her pulse faint but there. He laid her near the fire, fed her sips of warm water, and sat watching as the flicker of life slowly returned to her lips. He didn't know who she was or why someone would carve such cruelty into her body, but something deep inside him stirred, the same instinct that once made him a protector before life tore that purpose away. Caleb had once been a firefighter, a husband, and a father. 7 years ago, his wife, Anna, and their little boy had died in a wildfire that swept through a nearby town. He'd tried to save them, but the fire had moved faster than he could. The memory of their screams haunted him every night. He'd left civilization behind, building a small cabin high in the mountains, where he spoke to no one and lived with only his dog, Ranger, for company. But now, this stranger, this broken woman, had entered his world like a ghost from another life, bleeding and branded with words that made no sense. When she finally woke, her blue eyes darted around in confusion. She tried to sit up but cried out in pain. Caleb spoke softly, telling her she was safe, but she recoiled as if his voice itself hurt her. She didn't trust him, maybe she didn't trust anyone. In time, through small gestures, a bowl of hot soup, a quiet moment by the fire, a bandage changed carefully, she began to relax. Her name, he learned, was Evelyn, though she hesitated to say more. The words burned into her skin, Apache Lover, were a mark of hatred. She had fallen in love with a man from a nearby Apache reservation, and someone, consumed by prejudice and cruelty, had tried to make her pay for it. She'd been kidnapped, beaten, and left for dead. Somehow, she'd managed to escape and climb the mountain, seeking refuge, until exhaustion had taken her down. Caleb's world, once gray and empty, began to shift. The fire in his cabin burned brighter with her presence. He found himself talking again, sharing little things, about his wife, his son, the way the stars looked clearer at 2 a.m. He hadn't spoken those words aloud in years. Evelyn, too, began to open up. She spoke of her lover, Kai, a kind young Apache artist who made jewelry and painted the mountains as if he could feel their heartbeat. She said she hadn't seen him since the night of the attack. She didn't even know if he was alive. Days turned into weeks. The scars on Evelyn's body began to heal, but the ones inside lingered. Caleb could see it, the way she stared at the horizon each morning, as if afraid of the world that waited beyond the trees. Yet slowly, something fragile began to grow between them, not love, not yet, but understanding. They were two wounded souls learning how to breathe again. Caleb taught her how to split firewood, how to track the elk in the snow, how to find comfort in silence. And Evelyn, in return, taught him how to laugh again, a sound he hadn't made since the fire stole his family. But peace never lasts long when pain is left unresolved. One evening, while they sat by the fire, a sound echoed through the trees, the crunch of tires on gravel. No one ever came up this mountain. Caleb went to the window and saw 2 trucks pulling up, headlights slicing through the fog. Men stepped out, hard-faced, rough, carrying rifles. Evelyn's face turned white. She whispered that they were the same men who'd branded her. They'd found her. Caleb's heart pounded. He hadn't fought in years, but some old instinct awakened, the protector, the fighter, the man who ran into flames instead of away from them. He told Evelyn to hide in the root cellar beneath the cabin floor. Ranger growled, standing ready. The men knocked, pretending calm, then forced their way in. Caleb fought with everything he had. The cabin, once a sanctuary, erupted into chaos, fists, shouts, the crack of gunfire. Caleb was outnumbered, but he fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. When one of the men fired, Ranger lunged, taking the bullet meant for his master. The old dog fell, and Caleb, roaring in rage, disarmed the man and drove them back into the snowstorm outside. By the time the sheriff from the valley arrived, called by a passing hiker who'd heard the shots, the men were gone, but so was Evelyn. Tracks led into the forest. Caleb followed them for hours until he found her collapsed near a stream, clutching something in her hand, a small silver pendant shaped like a feather. It was his, she whispered. Kai's. She believed he was still alive. Over the next few days, Caleb and the sheriff uncovered the truth. Kai was alive, being held on the edge of the valley by the same men who'd branded Evelyn. They were part of a group that called themselves the Purists, determined to drive the native families off their ancestral land. Evelyn's love for Kai had made her a target. And now, Caleb realized, his mountain, his quiet hiding place, had become a battleground between hate and redemption. In the final confrontation, under a storm-dark sky, Caleb faced the men again. It wasn't rage that drove him this time, it was purpose. He'd run from life long enough. With the sheriff's help, they rescued Kai and brought the men to justice. Evelyn's tears fell freely as she reunited with her lover, her body shaking with relief. She turned to Caleb, unable to find the right words. But she didn't need to. He saw it in her eyes, gratitude, love, forgiveness, and something else. Hope. When it was all over, and the valley was quiet again, Caleb stood by Ranger's grave behind his cabin. The snow fell softly, just like the night he'd found Evelyn hanging from his roof. But now the silence wasn't empty, it was peaceful. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. Evelyn and Kai had invited him to visit their new home near the reservation. Maybe he would. Maybe he'd finally forgive himself. Maybe healing didn't mean forgetting, maybe it just meant allowing life back in. If this story touched your heart, if you believe kindness can heal even the deepest scars, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us keep telling stories of hope, humanity, and second chances. And before you go, tell us in the comments. Backhand index pointing right. Do you believe even the most broken people can find redemption if someone chooses to care?